Hello, I'm Lynn Scanella, and managing people is one of the most challenging parts of being a leader. Today we have 4 generations in the workplace, a broad range of different personalities and thinkers, plus people from many different backgrounds and cultures. In this short video, I'm going to focus on some basics around managing a multicultural team. Now, your team may be in your office, your city, your region, or your country, or they may physically be on the other side of the world. Does this mean you're truly a global community, or just one based in your home country with international branch offices? Managing different cultures is all about respect and understanding. Easy to say, but not always to do. It's hard to let go of our own cultural norms, but if we're to succeed, we simply cannot impose our single culture approach, our way, the only way, on our multicultural teams. It is clearly your responsibility as a manager to lead the charge. What we're going to do is take a look at the 4 most common areas likely to cause problems in a multicultural team. The answer to all of them is education, of yourself and of your team. And at the end of the presentation, I'll share some useful resources to get you started looking further. Let's have a look at some of the key challenges that you're going to be up against. Communication is one, management structures, timelines, and a false perception of similarity. Now, at the end of the day, being able to deal with these potential differences comes down to knowledge, not just on a broad east versus west, but in the specific cultural norms of your employees. There are 3 key areas in communication where we can stumble. So the first one is indirect versus direct communication. The second one is language. And the third one I'm going to look at today is nonverbal. So let's start with direct versus indirect communication. The difference, which is a key difference between Eastern and Western communication. In Western cultures, it's typically direct, from the language used to the eye contact. Western cultures acknowledge extroverts who speak up, speak their mind, and make fast decisions. Now, the majority of Eastern cultures honour indirect communication. Direct eye contact is considered rude. Saying explicitly what you want, especially without formal courtesies, is also considered rude. Talk is for communicating need-to-know information. Ramblers are reprimanded, and quiet introspection is rewarded. So, do you see any problems here? Of course, they're countless. Here's an example. The Japanese person Naoko moves to the US. He is thought not to have ideas because he doesn't speak up at meetings. The US manager assumes he agrees to everything, but really he's being polite and just considering his manager's words. They think he's weak because he doesn't approach the manager directly. Then there's the South African Gemma who moves to Korea. She's thought to be disrespectful because she confronts her Korean manager directly. The Korean manager assumes she's thoughtless because she tries to push decisions on all of them rather than revisit and discuss the issues with more depth. What to do? Well, both of these situations can be avoided if the managers were knowledgeable about the cultural norms of their team's background. I'm not talking about getting a quick Wikipedia fix, although that's a good start. As managers, we must take the time to study and understand the nuances around the cultures that we work with. If we do, we save dollars in lost productivity, stress leave, and create a harmonious workplace. Now, the second part of communication where we have difficulty is, of course, language. Whilst English has become the universal language of business, English isn't everybody's first language. So this means that those who are not as fluent in English may not speak up as much in meetings. Now, don't assume they have nothing to say. Silence may reflect the time they need to translate, think, and digest. So when working with your multicultural team, particularly if it's a virtual one, ensure you speak more slowly than normal. Don't use slang or idioms. Irony and metaphors really don't translate well. You can do a warm-up, particularly on a conference call. Give everyone notice of this, advance notice, so they know what's coming. And then get everyone to tell a story, personal or business, or talk about what's happening in their world, the world where they are. This is a great thought. It gets them talking and listening in English. You'll also learn more about each other and it builds trust. So the third communication issue that I'd like to mention is, of course, non-verbal communication. So let's not forget how important that is. A smile can mean welcome, but often a smile in Asia masks nerves. In countries like Australia, where there are masses of space, they're used to a lot of personal space. In a city like Shanghai of 23 million people, personal space is a luxury that no one has, and no one's offended if you crowd on in. Thumbs up means okay in the Western world. In the Middle East, it's a vulgar gesture. So by now, you know what I'm going to say. Education. Educate yourself and your team members about non-verbal communication in other parts of the world. Now let's look at management structures. This is an area where we can really fall over as well in multicultural teams. In Western cultures, our management structure has become flatter and flatter. Our offices are open plan, where those of any level can share information openly and directly. If you meet people in the lunchroom, sometimes it's difficult to tell who's in charge. Collaborative approaches are welcomed. Now, many in Asia also see themselves as part of a collaborative team, but there's an overriding sense of being part of a greater whole and accepting their place in the hierarchy and submitting to a superior's wishes is actually a key part of that and a part of being a team player. Many Asian structures tend to finish in a point right at the tip. The key is respect. Damage only occurs when people feel that they've been disrespected. So Nick, the New Zealand manager, moves to India, where he's in charge of 120 people. When he asks them in a meeting what they think, they often say very little, but they seem to agree to everything. Now, in their culture, they don't want to disappoint their manager. When he tries to share chai at morning tea, his team look uncomfortable. His Indian team want Nick to be the leader. That means in Nick's language, being more authoritarian and taking charge. Rebecca, the Israeli team manager, has a team based in Vietnam, but it's the highest turnover of any of the international teams. Rebecca's style, which is the norm in Israeli business, is seen as direct, often argumentative, loud, and intimidating. Now, the Vietnamese, with their respect for hierarchy, don't confront her directly, but they leave because they find her management style aggressive. Now, remember, this time when you go to educate, there are varying attitudes to hierarchy, and you'll need to be aware of cultural norms, not just Asia versus Western or East versus West, but specifics. Don't assume Thailand, Malaysia, and Cambodia all come under one umbrella when it comes to hierarchy. Now, the next area that we can struggle with is around timelines and delivery. Conflicting norms around timelines are one of the biggest causes of friction in a multicultural team. In the US, being decisive is seen as a valuable trait. So consequently, US managers get used to making quick decisions, and if it's a wrong one, they dust themselves off and they start again. In other cultures like India, making a mistake is not an option. The Indians deal with this by taking as long as it takes to get something perfect. Now, to the British, a few minutes means up to 5 minutes. To the Germans, a few minutes can mean up to 30 minutes. So when the German says to the English person, "I'll just be a few minutes," she gets a reputation for always being late, which doesn't, of course, fit with the German culture of efficiency. But it's only when we raise the issue and drill down that we find out it's an issue around perception of time. Even within teams of a similar culture, problems can arise. In the US, business meetings are scheduled for 30 minutes. Business is done and decisions made. Now in Australia and New Zealand, meetings are scheduled for 60 minutes to allow time for small talk and niceties. If they finish earlier, that's okay. But decisions may take a lot longer than with their US counterparts. Okay, by now you know what to do about this. educate. Education, learn how other cultures work. Now, lastly, I'd like to talk about a false perception of similarity, which can cause real issues in the workplace. Let me share a case study of Checkpoint Software Technologies, which involved Israeli and US teams working together. The people in Tel Aviv were asking management why their US counterparts were getting so upset by their emails. To the Americans, who like everything couched in courtesy, the Israelis seemed blunt and rude. The Israelis thought the Americans were wishy-washy for saying such things as saying, thanks in advance. Thanks for what? So Checkpoint ended up bringing in a consultant to help everyone understand how each other thought and communicated. Sometimes a false perception of similarity we have because we think it's easier to work with people if we all speak the same language. But apparently foreign nationals from English-speaking countries experience higher rates of culture shock than those from non-English speaking countries. Australians, New Zealanders and the British have often been known for shocking their US counterparts with what they see as biting humour, but received by their American friends as just plain rude. Now, in this short video, we've talked about education. We've made some generalisations about different cultures, and wherever people are involved, please remember it's often way more complex than this. But the foundation is you can't do anything without respect, openness, and empathy. So take that foundation and add your knowledge of different cultures, communication styles, their management structure, their timelines, and any false similarities, and you'll be equipped with some solid business tools for managing your multicultural teams. When you do get a new team together or add a new member to your team, bring the issues of culture out on the table in a sensitive manner. Share some of your knowledge that you may have about cultures involved in the team, particularly about your own, and invite others to do the same, either in writing, a private or a public forum, wherever they're most comfortable. Introduce the key areas I've talked about today, communication, management structure and timelines, as areas for potential challenge, and create a discussion around why and what we do. Having a multicultural team is a gift. Diversity fosters innovation and new ideas. It helps attract and retain well-qualified employees, and it gives us a better understanding of diverse customers in diverse markets. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation today. Here's a few resources to get you going on your quest for managing multicultural teams. There's a lot more out there, so I'd encourage you to go out and source them, and remember to educate yourself. I'm Lynn Scanella from Ripe Learning, and I love diversity.